Tonight, the president weighs in on the arrest of black scholar Henry Louis Gates.
The Cambridge police acted stupidly.
And the officer responds.
He's way off base.
I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, a setback for health care reform. The top Democrat in the Senate says it will miss the president's August target date. Young girls caught up in a life of prostitution. What one judge is doing to try to break the cycle. And a final farewell to Walter Cronkite.
Walter was such a good friend. I can't get over it.
And good evening, everyone. President Obama has placed himself right into the middle of a very controversial case, the arrest of Henry Louis Gates, an African-American scholar who says he was the victim of racial profiling, and a white Cambridge, Massachusetts police officer who says he was just following procedure. Here is the president at his news conference last night.
I should say at the outset that Skip Gates is a friend, so I may be a little biased here. I don't know, not having been there and not seeing all the facts, what role race played in that, but I think it's fair to say, number one, any of us would be pretty angry. Number two, that the Cambridge police acted stupidly in arresting somebody when there was already proof that they were in their own home. And number three, what I think we know separate and apart from this incident is that there is a long history in this country of African Americans and Latinos being stopped by law enforcement disproportionately. And that's just a fact.
Today, the president said he is, quote, surprised by the controversy surrounding those comments. He didn't take it back, but he did add that he understands the sergeant who made the arrest is a, quote, outstanding police officer. Today, that officer, James Crowley, and his department responded. Here's Jim Axelrod.
With the Cambridge Police Department squarely behind him.
Based on what I've seen from the other officers and heard from the officers, he maintained a professional decorum during the course of the entire situation and conducted himself in a professional manner.
Today, Sergeant James Crowley pushed back against both the president's comments.
I support the President of the United States 110%. I think he's way off base, wading into a local issue without knowing all the facts, as he himself stated before he made that comment.
And the idea that he should apologize to Henry Louis Gates.
The apology won't come from me. I've done nothing wrong.
It's now been a week since Gates, a professor at Harvard and a leading thinker about African-American culture, was trying to push open his jammed front door when a woman passing by called the police, thinking Gates was breaking in. Crowley responded, finding Gates inside his house. Crowley asked Gates for his ID and to step outside. Gates provided the ID but refused to leave his house, asking Crowley for his name and badge number. Gates says Crowley ignored him, walking out of the house. When Gates followed him, he says, to demand that information, he was arrested for disorderly conduct. An 11-year veteran of the force, Crowley is an expert on racial profiling, teaching a police academy course on how to avoid it for 5 years. He says he asked Gates to step outside for his own safety, standard practice, since Crowley didn't know if there was a suspect inside. In his police report, he said Gates replied, "Yeah, I'll speak with your mama outside."
There was a lot of yelling. There was references to my mother, something you wouldn't expect from anybody that should be grateful that you're there investigating a report of a crime in progress, let alone a Harvard University professor.
As for the president, his press secretary is now trying to walk back Mr. Obama's remarks, saying the president was not calling the sergeant stupid, just remarking that cooler heads should have prevailed. Katie?
Jim Axelrod. Jim, thank you. There is, of course, a long history of tension in this country between African Americans and the police. And whenever there's a suggestion that race may be involved in a confrontation with an officer, emotions still run high. Bill Whitaker explains why.
When it comes to matters of race,
both of them exercise poor judgment.
The Professor Skip Gates incident is like a national Rorschach test. What you see depends on who you are. Today, many African Americans see racial profiling.
This is not right. This is happening all over the place.
This is a racist incident?
others a cop performing his duties.
This is a cop doing his job.
This latest incident spotlights a history of mistrust between police and minority communities. In May, a white New York City cop mistook a black colleague for a criminal and shot him dead. In Oakland, a transit officer fatally shot an unarmed black man in the back on New Year's Day. Ryan Robertson was arrested on his way to exams at Harvard in 2003 when he yelled at a Cambridge officer who questioned whether he actually owned his BMW. It still hurts today.
There is no scripted reaction that you can have for being dehumanized by an authority figure.
Black mistrust of the LAPD fueled the deadly riot of 1992. Current Chief William Bratton has been applauded by blacks and whites for making racial fairness the centerpiece of his reform effort. Still, there's a fine line between what some call profiling and others good policing.
All aspects of sensitivity is in the back of the officer's mind, but keeping himself and his partner and the community safe is paramount initially.
When Barack Obama was elected president, there was much talk that the U.S. was becoming a post-racial society. The heated debate over this latest incident shows there's still a long way to go.
We need to understand how to recognize when race is operating at a subconscious level and also overtly. And I don't think we are being honest with ourselves when we try to pretend it isn't there.
Right now, we're doing a lot of talking, but is anyone listening? Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Meanwhile, President Obama is keeping up the pressure on Congress for health care reform. But while campaigning for it in Cleveland today, he got word that is not going to happen as fast as he had hoped. Our chief White House correspondent Chip Reed is traveling with the president.
At a town hall in the Cleveland suburbs today, the president finally conceded that Congress won't meet his demand of passing health care reform bills before the August recess.
That's okay. I just want people to keep on working.
He appeared to take it in stride, a dramatic change from just days ago when he was still insisting on his deadline. What happened? A bipartisan group of senators struggling for compromise pleaded for more time. Democratic leader Harry Reid said yes.
And I don't think it's unreasonable. This is a complex, difficult issue.
Some Democrats worry that a month-long delay will give the president's critics time to mount a campaign and turn public opinion against health care reform. But House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said today she's not concerned.
I'm not afraid of August. It's a month.
And the president insisted his deadline for final passage is still firm.
I want it done by the end of this year.
Missing the August deadline is a rare defeat for President Obama. Some Republicans say it's a clear sign he's beginning to lose his clout on Capitol Hill. Katie?
Chip Reed reporting from Shaker Heights, Ohio tonight. Thank you. To business news now, and a U-turn for Ford tonight. It's making money. Ford is the only one of the big three Detroit automakers that did not take bailout money or file for bankruptcy. Today, it reported its first profit in more than a year, $2.3 billion in the second quarter. Ford stock soared 10%. As a result. Now, many stocks rose today as Wall Street continued its rally after news of a big rise in home sales. The Dow shot up 188 points and closed above 9,000 for the first time since January. The Nasdaq finished up for the 12th session in a row. Now to a major corruption case in New Jersey. 44 people were arrested in a federal sting today, including 3 mayors and 5 rabbis. Kelly Wallace says the allegations include everything from bribery to selling organs.
There were so many suspects, FBI agents needed a bus. Leaders of some of New Jersey's most prominent towns and rabbis from New York and New Jersey being led in handcuffs.
This case is not about politics. It is certainly not about religion. It is about a shocking betrayal of the public trust.
These are 2 nearly separate investigations. Their common link, what the government calls a cooperating witness, reportedly this man, Solomon Dweck, who became an informant 2 years ago after being accused of a $50 million bank fraud. In what reads like a Sopranos episode, he wore a wire for the FBI, handing out envelopes stuffed with cash to public officials in parking lots and laundering $3 million with the rabbis. Hoboken Mayor Peter Camerano, sworn in only 3 weeks ago, is accused of accepting $25,000 in cash. He told the cooperating witness, quote, "You're going to be treated like a friend." And of the people who oppose him, quote, "They get ground into powder."
Politicians willingly put themselves up for sale. They existed in an ethics-free zone.
Separately, the cooperating witness gave what he said were illegal gains to the rabbis who allegedly hid the money using charitable organizations. One suspect even offered to find a human kidney for a transplant. This is all part of a 10-year public corruption investigation that has already yielded 2 other high-profile indictments. Officials say some politicians don't seem to be getting the message.
New Jersey's corruption problem is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the nation.
Notoriety that no state wants. Kelly Wallace, CBS News, Newark.
And coming up next here on the CBS Evening News, young girls caught up in a world of prostitution and the judge who's trying to save them. As we did last night, we caution you now about our next story, one you may not want your young children to see. It's about underage girls in this country lured into the dark world of prostitution. Hundreds of thousands of them every year. Las Vegas has become a center of the teenage sex trade, but now a judge there is pushing for a new approach to try to rescue these lost girls. Behind the bright lights of the Las Vegas Strip, there's a seedy underworld.
So how many dates tonight?
7 dates.
7 dates? You're getting $100 a day? That's pretty good.
The reality is that a lot of people come to Las Vegas and they think that prostitution's legal. So when they come here and it's an adult playground, they think that kids are for sale.
Some of the kids are as young as 12, part of a massive workforce of prostitutes, some 35,000 strong, who operate in casinos, clubs, hotels, and the streets along the Vegas Strip.
She's just west of the Marquee now.
We spent one night with an undercover vice squad from the city's police department. 6 women were arrested in 5 hours, 2 of them under 18.
How come you're down here on the Strip this hour of the night?
I didn't know, I was just walking.
Just walking? There's a lot of bad things that can happen out here to a girl your age, you know that, right?
Tina, who we've disguised for her own safety, used to be one of those girls. Raised by an absentee mother who worked as a call girl, she was lured into prostitution by a pimp posing as a rap star, looking for girls to star in a music video.
You know, I remember turning my first trick at 12 years old, and after that it was kind of like a whatever thing. Like, I did it once, might as well do it again.
By 17, Tina was strung out on drugs, had been arrested several times, and was being abused by her pimp. She hit rock bottom.
I looked at myself in the mirror one day and I didn't recognize myself. I cried, and I just cried, and I said, what am I doing with my life? Like, I didn't care about anything. I didn't want to live anymore.
After her last arrest, she was placed in a group home where a former prostitute helped her find a job and get off the streets. Tina's story is hardly unusual. Underage prostitution in Sin City is on the rise. In the last 2 years, nearly 400 girls under the age of 18 have been arrested or detained by the Vegas Vice Squad. Half the pimps arrested this year had prostitutes who were underage. And these girls are not all from Nevada. 60% come from other states all across the country.
I believe that children have now become a commodity for these pimps, no different than drugs and running guns. They're just reusable.
Reusable and caught in a vicious cycle. Because they're underage, the girls are not jailed. Instead, they're temporarily placed into detention centers or group homes where resources are limited. As a result, 80% run right back to the streets and into the arms of their pimps.
All rise and come to order.
For Judge William Boyd, this is unacceptable. For the past 4 years, he's been the only judge presiding over the teen prostitution court in Las Vegas.
She needs to commit to me that she's gonna stay put.
His frustration is apparent.
Let's just focus on how to keep this child alive until she's 18.
How is the system failing these kids?
we're failing these children because we're failing to recognize the problem. We get one jurisdiction that deals with the problem effectively, they just move them somewhere else. You need a concerted nationwide effort. You need national attention to this. The footprint of the property would be on
this small plot of land on the outskirts of Las Vegas is where Judge Voy hopes to build a model for the nation. He wants to establish a specialized safe house staffed by probation officers and social workers who can deprogram girls who believe pimps are their protectors, a place where the girls are not permitted to leave. He's driven by the faces he sees every day, part of a generation of young lives already destroyed before they've even had a chance to grow up.
Seeing that 12-year-old or 13 or 14-year-old standing in front of you and look at that child and go, oh my God, this is what's happening to you and has been happening to you. I can't let that persist.
The recession has put his vision on hold, so the lot sits empty. And in the city of bright lights, countless teens live in the shadows with the odds against them and nowhere to turn. Until public funds become available, Judge Voy is looking to the private sector to help fund his idea of a safe house. And for more on this series, you can go to our website at cbsnews.com. And coming up next, a final goodbye to Walter Cronkite. This was a moving and inspirational day for all of us here at CBS News. At his funeral today in St. Bartholomew's Church here in New York City, family, friends, and colleagues of Walter Cronkite said a final goodbye.
I loved my dad. I admired my dad. He was just a reporter, he'd say. He just ended up reporting bigger and bigger stories. Thanks for being such a good role model, saying to Mom as you passed her in the hall or in the kitchen, shall we dance? And then taking her for a few turns around the room.
Walter was such a good friend. I can't get over it. We met in London. We were both covering the 8th Air Force. Walter was with the United Press, and I was with the Army newspaper, the Stars and Stripes. You get to know someone pretty well in a war. I just feel so terrible about Walter's death that I can hardly say anything. He's been such a good friend over the years. Please excuse me. Thank you.
He had this bizarre idea once that he would ad-lib the newscast. Well, we tried it, and Walter insisted that when it came time to roll a piece of film, he would brush his nose, and that would be the cue to the I kid you not, this really happened. And that would be the cue to the director to roll the projector, and we never made it, okay? It was utter chaos.
Sailing with Walter was not for the faint of heart. Spray flying port and starboard, the brave crew hanging on for dear life. Walter, hunched over the helm, would catch my eye, grin, and holler, sensational. Now my brother, my teacher, my shipmate and pal, it's time for me to say, good night, old boy. It's all been sensational.
And to the man who set a steady course for us here at CBS News, thank you and farewell, Walter. I'm Katie Couric. Good night.